Hey, you geeks! Now seems like a great time to cover my first experience ending a series, which was devastatingly final. The last battle killed off all my favorite characters, destroyed Narnia, and took a sizable bite out of my childhood innocence. For when the world ends, both faith and hope are done away with, but love remains. When I read this as a fifth grader, the end of my hope involved wearing a lot of very dark colors, which I'm not sure was Lewis's intent. So, without further ado, here are 10 things about C.S. Lewis's The Last Battle in the Chronicles of Narnia. Gaslighting. If there was ever an apt character to embody those who would kill a child's magical world, a gaslighting fat dictator is just the person. Schiff's manipulation of puzzle is hard to read.
Just right for not much of a donkey.
Schiff, the cleverest and shiftiest of the apes, an utter Englishman, is the true mastermind of the apocalypse, even if the whole thing rather spirals out of his control, as both Tarkin Rishta and the Ginger Cat take up the game of abusing puzzle. Though I wonder, was Lewis kicked by a donkey as a child or something? Rabadash turned into a donkey? And now poor Puzzle is the literal Antichrist, though both receive redemption. Not a tame lion. Lewis sets up a very interesting question. If Aslan is
not a tame lion.
No. But he is good.
then how do we know he is good? How do we know what he would do? Does a person's sense of reason and the common good bind whatever actions Aslan takes? If Aslan is bound by people's sense of the good, isn't he tame? Then Lewis sidesteps this question and directs focus to how silly the dwarves are for insisting that they won't be taken in by any tricks. He uses the same analogy in The Great Divorce, and it's good. But his analogy in Mere Christianity about the natural law for how a person knows what is good is even better. And I'm sad he didn't use it here. And that would have actually given children something to hold on to rather than another thing to mourn. Killer unicorns attack. I was a bit facetious when I made the Great Divorce's thumbnail, but here I'm dead serious. The unicorn and King Tyrion do attack Calormen several times in this book. Though really, what is a unicorn doing with a man? Even the Dragon Prince got this detail right.
My daughter Claudia succeeded where I could not. She captured a unicorn and brought me its horn.
Anyway, the first time Tyrion and Jewel kill Calormen, they feel so guilty about it they let themselves be led away for a trial. As if anyone wants to read about a trial when the world is ending. It makes some badgers very uneasy. Though Lewis is clever enough not to put us through a trial plot. So Tyrion never gets his trial, and then Schiff says the stupidest thing.
Impressive. Every word in that sentence was wrong.
Tashlan. Here we see Lewis's negative reaction to the great cultural equivocation in his day.
The world has gone mad today, and good's bad today, and black's white today, and day's night today.
The great lie that Tash is the same as Aslan and that neither really exist isn't unique to Lewis's day, though it comes in new flavors and colors in each generation. Though I agree with Lewis that it is a lie, I take slight issue in how he explains the distinction between Aslan and Tash as polar opposites, and thereby somewhat equivalent in power. Not that what Aslan says is wrong, it could just be said better. Especially when Lewis uses real, non-satanic religions to describe Tash. I couldn't help but notice that Tash has 4 arms and is often invoked as a bolt which flies from above, or alternatively as a fire from heaven. So Lewis seems to be evoking more of the Hindu god Agni and planting him in a Muslim-style world, which is an odd critique of Islam since they are iconoclasts. Odder still, because I couldn't find any Ottoman sources wishing their sultan would rule forever. That seems to be more of a British thing.
Long live Elizabeth, our blessed queen!
Return to Narnia. For a while, we do get the typical Narnian adventure, with Jill and Eustace helping free Jewel and Puzzle from the tyrant's grasp. As a gold awardee, I loved Jill showing off her Girl Guide skills.
Okay, now, north is that way. Which way is the campsite?
Though Lewis perpetuates the misconception that girls are meant to be archers, and boys can totally go to war, flail their swords wildly, and live. Though technically Eustace was already dead, so maybe it doesn't matter. Also for me, reading other fantasy books, then returning years later, little things jump out at me, like they ate a rabbit for supper at the tower before they went to the last battle. Not to mention, every time they swear by the my ears did a double take. Some things don't age well. Lewis says some, well, quite racist things in this book, both in terms of fantasy races, with apes never being honest, dwarves quick to serve themselves, and Lopen was offended by the wicked wolves and foxes stereotypes. On top of the subtext that some animals with free will tend naturally towards wickedness, he outright calls the black-faced Calormen a cursed race, and he seemed to be aware that this is rude, for when Emeth, the good Calormen, discusses idioms with the dogs, they come to the conclusion
everyone's a little bit racist sometimes.
Despite their words, Lewis's characters treat Calormen as honorable adversaries. Tyrion did apologize to the guard he threatened to kill and then tied up. At the end of it all, Lewis specifically mentions that Calormen came to Aslan's stable door, and only described some of the talking animals being turned away. Therefore, one could conclude that all the Calormen made it into Aslan's country, or at least all the Calormen who, through the grace of Aslan, merited it. Thus, they are not categorically condemned or saved as a race. We only hear of Emeth's interaction with Aslan because that is all the children needed to hear, not because I'd wager it was the only one that happened. The last battle that wasn't. The last battle, for which I presume this book is named, is hardly a battle at all. More of a skirmish in a small field, which seemed to grow bigger and bigger with each passing hour. And this is before we get into the stable. Now, I know something as small as an intersection can become a battleground.
Red, a world about to dawn.
But Lewis gives us great charges of horses, meaningful retreats, and a 3-way fight, all going on in what I presume is the space of a baseball field, or rather, a cricket pitch. Also, the last battle is not the last. It is merely the last battle of the King of Narnia. After Tyrion fell through the stable, perhaps thousands of years passed from when the great giant Time loomed over Narnia, dragons and flying lizards roamed the land, the dead walked, and presumably Calormen fought Narnians until they were all dead, only then to make their procession through the stable door. Thus, the Narnian apocalypse was actually quite a drawn-out affair, but our characters had a very quick part in it. For the rest, they were mere spectators. The rapturous stable.
The inside's bigger than the outside?
Yes?
Aslan's TARDIS is bigger than the Doctor's TARDIS, though with Aslan holding authority to command the giant Time, does that make Aslan a Lord of Time? Let me know down in the comments. I've always had issues with the doorway of death trope. When I first read this book, I recalled being confused as to why the king or the children never went back out. Sure, they had reached a place of safety, but the ginger cat had demonstrated that it was possible to go back out. So wasn't leaving their comrades to die as they had a merry picnic dishonorable? I see now that it's a great metaphor for how once one reaches heaven, even its borders, no one would ever want to leave. Well, that flew right over my head as a child, and as Lewis intends this to be a children's book, he sort of missed the mark. Aslan doesn't weep. As this is apparently Narnia's final judgment, we will not get into the purgatory debate I raised in The Great Divorce. Rather, my scruple is that Aslan doesn't weep for the end of Narnia. For there was good in Narnia, even as a shadow world, and the children mourn its loss. I cannot abide that Aslan destroys the world, then makes the children mourn alone. Aslan turned swiftly round, crouched lower, lashed himself with his tail, and shot away like a golden arrow.
It got up, and it danced away.
It what?
It got up, and it danced away.
It got up and danced away.
See? It even sounds crazy when you say it.
There is nothing quite so depressing as believing that there is an all-knowing, all-powerful, all-good God who is off having a marvelous time without you when you are miserable. True, the children have each other, and Aslan, I guess, was off converting Emeth and the other Calormen, but time and space went all wonky at the end anyway. Could he not have spared a moment to comfort our heroes? The dream ends. As the professor so aptly points out, Narnia was but a dream.
As if from a dream. Or a dream of a dream.
And now time has ended and the dream is over. Lord Diggory is quite right in that it is all there in Plato, and Plato, of course, says it better. Back to our heroes, well, most of them, have gathered in Aslan's country, and it was wonderful to see Ripcheek, Bree, Arvis, Fledge, and company again. I definitely smiled through my tears both times I read it. I cried even if Aslan doesn't. Not for joy, but because Susan, along with Jill and Eustace's parents, were not there. They are in Shadow England preparing funerals for all their loved ones. And last, I cry as one untimely born, knowing that, canonically, Narnia never existed in my lifetime. I will never wander through a wardrobe and rule in Cair Paravel. Have I completely gotten over this? No. But I have found and made other fantasy realms of my own, and while I've certainly gotten older, I hope to never be something so odious as grown up. Thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe if you would like to see more. Your patronage is greatly appreciated.